Hello, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the first session of Leaf's IT Autumn Series. It's an Autumn Cyber Series, and it's designed to equip organizations throughout Ireland with critical insights into emerging cyber threats and the latest technologies available to combat those and to assist you. I'm Michael Conway of Renaissance, and I'm delighted to welcome you to the first session, which is understanding the latest cyber threats and how to stay ahead. And today I'm delighted to be joined by Dan Carr, who is Territory Account Manager for SonicWall in Ireland, and Stephen Goldblatt, who was CEO of Leaf. Just a couple of things about housekeeping before we get started. I'd just like to go through. All attendees are muted for the session, but you'll be unmuted for the Q&A portion. The session is being recorded because unfortunately a number of people who wanted to see the session are unable to attend at this time. But we want to make the session, most importantly, as interactive and beneficial for you. So what we want you to do is to get the most out of this. So if you have any questions, please enter them into the chats or send them directly to myself. We look to address those in the Q&A session afterwards. So it's really important that you get the benefit out of this session for you and that it answers the questions you have and the queries and thoughts and concerns that you have. So without further ado, I'd like to pass over to Dan to get things started. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Michael. So yes, just to introduce myself, Daniel Carr. I've been the Territory Account Manager in Ireland for SonicWall for just had my 10-year anniversary this year, so I've been around the block a bit here. I thought it would be important to give, for those who aren't familiar with SonicWall, a little bit of background as to who we are and what we do. We are a global organization. We have 500,000 plus customers across the globe. We have, and we're an industry veteran, I guess you could call us. We've been in the business for just over 30 years. At one stage, you may have been aware of us being acquired by Dell, and in 2017 we divested from them. One of the things that has happened since then, I mean, most would probably know SonicWall as a firewall vendor, which is fair. But we have invested very heavily in the organization since we were owned by Dell to become really an end-to-end portfolio cybersecurity solutions company. We have added to, through acquisition and through also innovation, lots of different products in our portfolio, so it's quite broad. I won't go into it in the detail, but it's fair to say if you want to reach out to us at another time, we'd be happy to show you what it looks like. Today I will talk a little bit about the statistics that we get from our global threat intelligence network. We have a long-standing threat research team. We publish a cyber threat report twice a year. If you haven't seen the one from earlier this year, I would urge you to reach out to us, and we can share a copy with you. What I'll cover today is the mid-year threat report, which is like, as it sounds, halfway through the year, we look at the statistics from last year, the start of this year, and how they've evolved to the middle of this year. It's safe to say that we process a huge amount of information across the year, and what we try to do is to distill it down into something that's easy to understand, and to give you and your businesses some background information to, I guess, scope the conversations that you're having or support the conversations that you're having within your business, and when you're trying to plan out what kind of cybersecurity policies to put in place and what actions to take in the near to distant future. It's worth mentioning that SonicWall are, we're 100% channel. That's why we're here today with Leaf, partnering with Leaf for over 2 decades now, which we're very happy to do so. We support all the way through the channel. You can speak to us directly, but when it comes time to delivering our services, we rely on the expertise of our partner base, and you'll see that later today in the call. And we are also a cybersecurity innovators as well. That some of the technologies that I'll mention or pass by today are specific to SonicWall and very much differentiators from us and our competition. So today I'll cover off a little bit about the mid-year cyber threat report. We have over 1 million sensors globally that collect terabytes of data on a daily, hourly basis, and these threat reports are that information distilled down into statistics to help you, as I said before, to make the best decisions for your business. One of the things that has changed where we are as a business, and I guess made these reports richer in their content, is the fact that we're not just looking at data from a firewall perspective. We're also looking at it from an endpoint perspective, from an email perspective, the likes of Office 365. We're collecting data from all sorts of sources, from switching, from access points, from the whole of our portfolio, which means that the data that we have is quite a bit different, I guess, and it's unique in its content. A little bit of an overview. Obviously, the threat landscape is constantly changing. We have seen and detected 50 hours worth of critical attacks in a 40-hour week. And this equates to 125% during an increase in a 40-hour week. And I guess what this says is that the technologies that you have in place are being pushed to their limits. You might not see it. I mean, in a lot of cases, if you can even see the device, it's a box in a corner, or it's in a different room, and it's the light flashes, and you kind of hope that it's doing its job, and it is. I mean, it's very hard to tell apart from if something goes wrong. But our firewall technology, our product portfolio is very much protecting our customers on an hourly, weekly, daily basis. We're protecting organizations from potentially 46 days of downtime in the first 5 months of 2024. Keeping in mind, I mean, I know statistic fatigue is quite common, and these numbers are very much from a global perspective. And we'll do our best at times to be able to kind of share more local stories and stats. But I guess safe to say, from a summary point of view, these technologies are required. They are doing their job. 12.6% of all revenues are exposed to cyber threats without proper protection. And that's quite a big number. $10 million company equates to 1.2 million. It may be that you and your businesses aren't making that kind of turnover, but the turnover is relevant to your own business and the sector that you're in, and it's still extremely important to you, and that's what we're protecting ultimately. Unfortunately, threats for the most part are still increasing. As there are more people in the globe, as cybercrime continues to become one of the most lucrative industries to go into. I remember mentioning a stat, it was probably 5 or 6 years ago, that cybercrime had outpassed the drugs trade globally as the #1 criminal activity to get into to make money. So it's not going anywhere. Ransomware is no surprise that it's on the rise. But interestingly, it's been on the rise in North and South America. It's actually been on the decrease in EMEA. And so Europe are doing a really good job of, I guess, putting technologies in, listening to their trusted advisors, and putting in technologies that are preventing. And there's also a lot being done from, European authorities as well to shut down criminal organizations. If you have seen our threat report from the start of the year, if not, please do. There's some information there around what we've not we've done. Can't take credit for that, but I guess Europeans have been doing to close down and break up specific criminal organizations. Some high-profile arrests over the past couple of years have dispersed these organizations and made it harder for them to do what they do in and around Europe. But malware is still trending upwards. And just for those who aren't, familiar or maybe as sharp on the malware versus ransomware. Ransomware is a type of malware. Malware is a piece of code that ultimately is, put onto the network through one means or another. And it's there to do a job. In most cases, you will see it deploy or it will be a type of ransomware. And ransomware effectively is a piece of code that will lock out resources on a device and will encrypt them in a lot of cases and will ask for a payment in return. Quite a straightforward operation, a very lucrative operation, and it's no surprise to see that in certain regions it's still on the increase. The key thing here, I guess, to take away from this is that while ransomware may have been dropped around Europe, that doesn't mean that it's going to go away, because cyber criminals are smart. They use different means, and just because ransomware is dropping down doesn't mean that they're finding other ways to, to extract or extort from companies. 15% of all malware leveraging software packaging in encrypted means as well. So the rising threats, we see a huge amount of activity around IoT devices. And if you're not familiar, that is really any kind of appliance or piece of technology that you have either home or in your business that connects to the internet, which is quite a vast number. The reason why IoT, or one of the reasons why IoT attacks are on the increase, is because in general, the manufacturers of these devices, they're not making them with security as the primary concern. They're making them so that they are cost effective, that they link into multiple different devices. I'm sure everybody on this call has set up a Google or an Amazon device, a smart device in their house. They'll connect to everything. They want to be very useful. They want to learn, but security isn't necessarily the primary concern there. And this applies also to things like CCTV cameras, point of sale devices, security kind of fob key devices that are in buildings, even such things like, parking meters, that kind of thing. So really anything that you can see that connects. Sounds a bit Ocean's 11, but we've seen scenarios where casinos have been breached by connecting to a thermostat in a fish tank. So that kind of thing can happen, and that's the reason why we're seeing such an increase, is because cyber criminals are obviously looking for the path of least resistance, and with a 107% increase from the last time we did this report, you can see that it's obviously being targeted a lot. The other area that we are seeing a huge amount of increase is in encrypted threats. And encrypted threats essentially can mean anything from a VPN tunnel, which we use to connect from outside the business to inside the business, or from one business to another business. So if you're working with other organizations and you are connecting to them via like a VPN, that's an encrypted channel. And criminals are targeting that because if you aren't running the types of checks on those, that can be done through technologies like firewalls and that, but it comes with a large overhead, and I guess that costs more money, so not everybody is doing that, and criminals are aware of this, which means that they're targeting it more, and obviously, so that's the kind of thing that you would need to reach out to your trusted advisor and have a discussion around to see what type of traffic is within your organization, how much of it is encrypted. On average, 85% of traffic is encrypted. If you go to a Facebook, or if you go to really any site that has a HTTPS in the signature, it's encrypted. It doesn't mean that it needs to be scanned, because not everything is a risk. It would be great in an ideal world, we would just absolutely scan everything, but we understand that can't be done. It's about having that conversation with your trusted advisor to check to see exactly how much of that traffic is being scanned and how much isn't. Did I see a question there? Oh, it's just around questions. Yes, sure. We'll answer as much of this. If anybody has any questions, jot them down, and we'll answer them at the end. And we've also seen an increase in the amount of customer received alerts from our managed services team, meaning that the amount of notifications, alerts, threats that are being recognized by technologies within a business are on the increase and being fed into not just our SOC services team, but also anybody that you're working with, which shows in general a trend upwards. Just go back there. RTDMI, which is a technology I mentioned that we have some proprietary technology in SonicWall. RTDMI is an engine within our Cloud Sandbox technology. You may have heard of it before, but it's a differentiator for SonicWall. Don't need to go into the technical details of what it does. What is interesting and what we saw over the last 6 months is that we were picking up 526 new variants a day. What does this say in layman's? This means that cyber criminals are constantly changing the means that they and tools that they use to get into an organization. And this technology is picking those up because it is using artificial intelligence to be able to see whether something is not what it says it is. And that's a simple way of saying it. These technologies are constantly working in the background to pick up on threats as they evolve. Criminals are not just going to stop and stand still. They're going to use tools that maybe we are aware of and that have blocked in the past, and they're going to slightly augment them to get past traditional means. And that's the reason why you will have, anytime you have that periodic conversation with your solution providers, that they will be talking, about you to new technologies, evolving technologies, because the landscape is constantly changing from their point of view, and we're constantly trying to adapt to be able to block them. What I mentioned before around how threats are changing and evolving, and maybe ransomware, for instance, has dropped in Europe. The likes of cryptojacking, for instance, has increased. A record-breaking year last year. It dropped 60% since last year, which was record-breaking. But overall, there's a 409% increase. And what cryptojacking is essentially a criminal getting access to a device, whether it be a laptop, a desktop, a workstation, a server, or what we've seen more recently is cloud services. And they use that compute power to mine cryptocurrencies. And often this kind of activity can go very much under the radar, and really only you might notice it as a reduction in performance in a device, or for those who have been unlucky enough for criminals to gain access to cloud services, you would probably see a rapid spike in the costs, because generally you're paying monthly into it, and obviously if you're paying for the resources on a monthly basis and resources are being used and abused, then that pricing would, your costs would go up and you would see it, and that we've seen an increase in that happening across the globe in our customer base. Supply chain attacks are an interesting one, and this, statistics-wise, these are stats that we have across the globe again, so not necessarily specific to Ireland, but still, the fact that we are seeing an increase in supply chain, meaning the organizations that you work with. So where criminals will get access to a vendor that you work closely with. Maybe it's an accounting company, maybe it's a payment company, maybe it's an organization, a building company that you are contracted to, that kind of scenario, who maybe do not have the same level of security measures in place as they should, and they are obviously more open to attack, and if they get breached, there's a chance that you guys can get breached through that. We've seen, the likes of DORA in the last year put a huge amount of pressure on the and requirements policies on the financial industry. And one of the big parts is in, supply chain. It's not just about whether your organization is putting the tools in place. It's whether you can verify whether the people that you're working with and contracting with and everything also have those types of measures in place. And I guess what you may, depending on the industry you're in, you may well either be beholden to supply that type of information, or you will have a requirement on you to provide information based on the contractors or supply chain that you work with. So it's a slight shift in the way that I guess an organization is thinking. It's not necessarily about your own security measures. It's also about the security measures of the organizations that you work with. Microsoft, I think, they're ubiquitous. We use a huge amount of their software, their applications, their products, and it's no surprise to see that their types of they're targeted nearly more than anybody else. We're seeing a huge increase in the trying to steal credentials and get to admin accounts within an organization, because once you have access to an admin account, you are obviously able to change policies, you're able to change rules, you're able to get access to user information, and also to be able to bypass security features. Just automatic patching, for instance, if you get access to an admin account, you're able to get access to how that organization updates whether their credentials are shared. And also we've seen an increase in the exploitation of multi-factor authentication. So while you have probably been, this has probably been discussed with you in the past around using multi-factor authentication, and it's still a requirement. It's still something that we need to do. We have seen an increase in the amount of those methods being, manipulated. So it's not that you should stop using them, but it's broadening the the different layers of security that you need to put in place, so that if the worst should happen and somebody does get access to an admin account, that they're limiting the amount of lateral movement that they have. It's about having a balanced approach, about ensuring the vulnerabilities are addressed promptly and reducing the window of exposure, to potential exploits regardless of the perceived severity. I got stuck on that slide there. Addressing both. Sorry about there. We're seeing an increase in Android devices being targeted more and more by threat actors using remote access Trojans, which essentially they will use a mobile device to get into an application and to be able to inject code that is going to give them access to multiple devices. They disguise themselves as a legitimate application to gain permissions and then connect and to be able to get, to command and control servers, which gives them the ability to steal credentials and bypass the likes of multi-factor authentication, which I mentioned before. We've seen widely used by threat actors this year to bypass. In April, we reported multiple campaigns where remote access Trojans use popular app icons to trick users. So you'll see a few of them here. So essentially what they're doing is they're using applications that you would normally log into without even giving it a second's thought, the likes of Netflix, PayPal, Instagram, and Microsoft. Stealing those credentials, granting permissions, enabling them to capture two-factor authentication codes through accessibility services, and then gain access to other resources on the network and your device. Again, if you have any concerns, or if you're using these types of applications within the organizations, or for those for remote users, the thing is to reach out to your partners and to have a conversation about what kind of security measures can be used to protect this kind of access and these kind of applications. We've also noted a trend with the rise of QR code phishing, or quishing as it's called. Attackers embed QR codes in phishing emails, and that encourages recipients to scan them with their smartphones. Obviously, we've probably all seen quite a big increase in this over the last number of years. I mean, if you go into your local Nando's, there's a QR code on the table, and you scan it to get the menu if you want to order from your table. So, where previously we wouldn't have seen as much of this, they're quite ubiquitous now. The codes typically lead to phishing URLs that mimic legitimate login pages. So Microsoft, for example, in this example, to harvest credentials again. And the industry reports indicate a dramatic increase in phishing attacks, rising from 0.2% in 2021 to 10.8%, just under 11% in 2024 when this report was published. And this method is particularly effective as it exploits the growing use of smartphones and QR codes. And I guess with any of these new technologies, when they first come about, you are not sure exactly how to use them, or you use them without giving it too much thought. So it's worth kind of, again, whether these are being used in the organization, if you're implementing software that has started to use QR codes, what your policies are around that, what technologies you are using to make sure that these are being used in a legitimate manner. QR codes were once relatively niche, but you can now find them in department stores, as I mentioned, tables and restaurants, as I mentioned, and coupons. So they're pretty much everywhere. So what can we do? From an insights perspective, human error is still probably the biggest part of it. So not just myself, yourself, but your employees, contractors, anybody within the industry. Human error poses the biggest significant threat because we're the weakest in the chain, unfortunately, still. We inadvertently expose vulnerabilities and we mishandle sensitive information. So that increases the risk to data breaches and unauthorized access. Part of the programs that you are probably already rolling out is to have staff trained and keeping them aware of these and keeping abreast of, I guess, like QR codes, new technologies that are being used and how to prevent misuse of them. Misconfigured security solutions. We see a huge amount of that, unfortunately, still, especially in cloud environments. It can lead to critical gaps in defenses and leaving systems and networks exposed to cyber threats and unauthorized access. Situations, for instance, where businesses are storing more and more data in cloud services, but maybe not applying the same security measures. For example, a physical firewall has always been needed on an on-prem site. So if you have an office, you would have sat behind a firewall traditionally. That would have provided that level of security to you. As data is being moved to the cloud, you need to question what kind of security measures you're putting in front of that. It could well be that there are none, or there are very basic security services. So again, an opportunity to reach out to the likes of your team in Leaf and have that conversation around, what are the security measures in place. There are now SonicWall, for instance, has a virtual firewall that can be used not just in a private environment, but also in public environments to give the same level of security that you would have had on-prem in the cloud. Blocking versus alerting as well. So choosing between blocking and alerting strategies in cybersecurity. And what we mean by that is having a security solution in place that doesn't just tell you that things are happening, or tell your managed service provider or your partner that things are happening, but that it actually have steps in place to be able to block and mitigate the risks as they come about. Also, procrastinating with patching. Albeit for you and your business, patching may not be something that you are taking on board yourself. If you have an IT team in place, they are responsible for doing this. If you've got managed services, then it may well be theirs. But it's about having the conversation as to who owns this task and making sure that they are not falling back on patching. As we've seen over the last year, with some vulnerabilities and updates that have come from security vendors, these can provide gaps for criminals to get in. With adequate patching and on-time patching, updating softwares, not just simply clicking the button. We've all done it to push it out, but keeping on top of that and making sure that there are people in the business or your partners, your managed service providers that are keeping on top of it. You'll avoid the gap or that window for criminals to utilize or abuse vulnerabilities that come up. And also not settling for default configurations. Unfortunately, we do see this a bit, that configurations are set up from an ease of use point of view rather than what is best practice. And again, that's a conversation for you to have, with your trusted providers to see what can be done to make sure that you're not just setting things up for performance or for user experience, but balancing it also with security measures. And that leads me to some best practices that we can take away, today. I'm happy to share these out with anybody, who would like to, to have them for their discussions within the business. As I mentioned, prioritizing rapid patching. We would, as an organization, and all security vendors would be the same. We make sure to push out updates, patches, fixes, updates on vulnerabilities, that kind of thing, as regularly as we possibly can. The key is to stay on top of those. You're narrowing the window for opportunity for criminals when you do this, and you're avoiding issues. Making sure to add multi-factor authentication. I would imagine that anybody you've spoken to about this has pushed this. Organizations don't always use it, but it's very much a needed practice within an organization. Also looking at cloud security, as I mentioned before, making sure that as you move data out of your organization, that the path to and the destination of that data is protected. If you look at, for instance, Amazon or Azure, Microsoft cloud provider, you look at their terms and conditions, they're very clear about the fact that data is your own, and they will provide services. They will provide additional services around security, but ultimately it's up to you to protect that data. Availing of continuous monitoring and incident response to make sure that should the worst happen, should there be a threat, that it's mitigated. Relying as well on solutions providers to be able to identify what is a real threat and what isn't, and to be able to assist you and your business with that. Doing things like network segmentation, not simply having something at the gateway and relying on that, but carving up your network to make sure that, say, particular resources, say maybe instance your finance department, are segregated away from other aspects of the business. Again, so if the worst should happen and somebody does get into the organization, that they can't just move around it and access anything that they want to. You're making it harder for them and less likely for them to continue. That also creates a longer window for us to see that they're in there and doing something that they shouldn't be, and stopping them. And obviously ongoing training as well. Not just putting security measures in place, but putting good policies in place, training your staff, and making sure that everybody in the organization is aware of their responsibilities to the business. And that is in a nutshell the update that we have for the mid-year threat report, and also some tidbits around what you maybe can do for your organization. So if I think Stephen, you're going to do your piece, and then we'll cover off any questions. But I'd like to say thank you very much for your time, and happy to answer any questions when the time comes.
Dan, I'm unsure if your slide needs to move on for Stephen's there.
Oh, apologies. Sorry, I only just saw that at the end. Happy to share the deck out if anybody has any questions on those. I can share the slide again.
Thank you, Dan. Absolutely. And good afternoon, or sorry, good morning, everyone. I've definitely jumped forward. Firstly, apologies. You might hear a slight flu virus in the voice for today, but that was come with old age and our ever-changing climate from warm to cold. Well, firstly, look, Leaf IT have been a partner of SonicWall for over 20 years now. It's been a very long and very cherished partnership that we've had. We've watched them change and evolve over the years. We've been a gold partner for the majority of those 20 years, in fact, well over 15, 18 years as a gold partner with SonicWall. And we've seen these technologies evolved in trying to keep our clients as secure as possible in an ever-changing threat landscape, which has significantly changed. Dan mentioned the Internet of Things, IoT devices, whether it be smart hubs, whether it be home business, EV charging points. I think there's an absolute area there that we're sort of neglecting, that EV charging companies just add them to the office network with no real thought of security that could be breached or been open with EV charging points. But we've seen so many things change, and I think one of the biggest things Dan also alluded to is the idea of having a security operations center, a SOC, a group of people with eyes on all the time, every day, every hour of the day, and throughout the year, no matter whether it's a holiday or not. And we've seen that requirement change significantly for our customers across the island of Ireland, not just from keeping themselves more secure, but also from a cyber risk insurance point of view, from a compliance point of view, where depending what body the compliance has to be sounded against, and also even in answering certain pieces of work in tenders that you may be required to say that you have this type of service in place. So what I do like with SonicWall is one of the more recent acquisitions they've made. They now are offering this eyes on all day, every day on the firewall. And that's something that we will talk more about and release to our client base over the coming months, that's an available enhanced service for them. I think the other change we've seen, and thankfully I said flu and not COVID, when I said how I was feeling today. The more and more remote working that has changed over the past 3 to 4 years. That people, yes, we did all run home at one point. Some have continued that sort of hybrid working policy, but it's actually just more having the flexibility still to offer that to your staff, to your employees. That remote working has become more and more of it just has to work. We've relied for years on the app on our laptop and connect to our firewall through what's called a VPN tunnel to securely access our services and our applications and our data. But the involvement of VPN has now come to what's called a zero trust network access, whereby you can only have an always on access to the information and data you need, whether it be in Microsoft for your emails or whether it be back to the office for some company files and data, that no matter where you move in the world, that is always available to you, and it's a much more secure and more swift connection into those environments. And that's where it leads me to this Christmas lunch and learn that we're having with SonicWall in Dublin in the Ivy on Thursday, the 5th of December. That will be a talk mainly regarding this move from what we've used in the past called VPN, or virtual private network, to the zero trust networking, which is SonicWall's cloud secure edge. And I see that being something that nearly all our customers will want to both learn more about and probably want to adopt as we move forward into 2025 as a much more secure and swifter technology to access the resources, but also to access the likes of the Microsofts of this world in a more secure manner. So those who can, and we'd look forward to greeting and meeting you in the Ivy in Dawson Street in Dublin on Thursday the 5th. And we're going to talk more about that. A little bit more about us. As I said, we've been a partner now for over 20 years. I think one of the unique things about Leaf and why we work closely with SonicWall and with Michael and Renaissance as our distribution channel is that we have up to 10 certified SonicWall engineers. So if you do have an issue around a SonicWall product portfolio, we have deliberately ensured that all our engineers have the technical ability to troubleshoot and solve that problem for you. And hopefully that sets us apart when it comes to actually delivering SonicWall services. Look, I thank you all for taking your time out today in the world of busy schedules. Thank you for joining us on this webinar. I now may pass you over to my equally revered, not feeling so good colleague at Renaissance, Michael Conway, as we move on to questions and answers.
Thank you, Stephen. I'm smiling at your remark about our cold to hot to cold and cold to hot climate. I'm missing the hot bit, but anyway, we've got the rest. No, listen, thank you very much, Dan and Stephen. Really appreciate that. And I think one of the things that and a comment that I'd make from a Renaissance perspective, because we've been around this business for, in the classic phrase, more years than I care to remember, and we see all of the various challenges and issues that people have come across in terms of cyber. But the environment is changing, the landscape is changing, that's for sure. You know, there's more and more people out there, there's more and more threats, and to your point, and come back on camera, Dan and Stephen there, because I'm going to throw out some questions there, but rather your observation about the EV charging and everything else, I think, you know, the real thing is everything is changing. You know, that there's air conditioning controls, there's EV charging. And one of the points that you made, Dan, I think was very interesting, and maybe let's throw it out for conversation, is third-party risk management, third parties out there. You know, we don't live in a silo anymore. We don't live in just our own little bubble. We're all working with different partners. You know, security into a building is probably outsourced, catering is outsourced, everything is outsourced. So we're living in those environments. So the threats are out there hugely. I mean, I'm sure, maybe Stephen, let me throw a question to you. Like, do you have war stories? I'm sure you've seen lots of these things out there, and you and your skilled team, your qualified team, have probably spent a lot of time trying to sort out these problems for people.
Well, that's the key. Unfortunately, we do arrive in environments unbeknown to us. That's not always the case, because all of our clients will obviously inform us beforehand. But they've had somebody in connecting the device, and they want to know what the Wi-Fi is. Immediately they're given the Wi-Fi by the customer, and they're connecting some, maybe a smart fridge in the office kitchen, or suddenly it's connected with no thought of what that might be and what the underlying problem could be. And I know I mentioned EV charging points, because that's one that's just so prevalent nowadays. And we're seeing a lot of it. It's a case of what's the Wi-Fi, and that's it. There's no thought again of, could this be open to attack? Because of course it could. There's no security built in an EV charging box. So it's just, that's what we see. And I think, Michael, the question's very relevant. I'm quite sure anybody has allowed somebody in to connect some device, unfortunately, to their network.
Yeah, and it's interesting when you look at the stats, and I know we can all live and die by stats, because it's people throw them at us all the time. But Dan, you were mentioned that the whole IoT stat there, and huge number of interconnected devices. And I think that's the point really that Stephen's highlighting with EV, but everything. I mean, like, those stats are probably scary, but they're actually real for an Irish context. Have you any thoughts or comments in relation to that, Dan, from your point of view?
Well, I think what we've seen over the last couple of years is a huge move for businesses, organizations to hybrid working. You know, I'm a hybrid worker myself, and it actually, if anything, cramped my style when the pandemic came along, because everybody else then decided that to work from home as well. I went from having the house to myself to not being allowed to. But you know, and things may go back a little bit towards people going into the office, but the likes of you got to look at it from the point of view with IoT. If you're a criminal trying to get into an organization or get into a device, or ultimately just find an opportunity to extort, you know, money out of somebody or an organization, you're going to look at the shift in workforce, the way things are changing, where the weak points are, and as I mentioned before, organizations who make new technologies aren't always coming at it from a security perspective, and that's the reason why we're in business. It's you know, there's a number of vendors in the cybersecurity space. The statistics, as you mentioned, I think they can go over the head a little bit sometimes, because, you know, in a lot of cases they're quite big numbers, but they are keeping us in business. They are real. We are seeing real world scenarios where these things are being, you know, manipulated and used to gain access to organizations, and unfortunately it does mean that, you know, the conversations that you will have with the likes of Stephen and his team, they are going to involve newer technologies. As Stephen alluded to, we made 2 acquisitions in the last 6 months to keep with where the trends in cybercrime are going. You know, we're moving with the trends to hybrid workforce to enable businesses to secure their users, to give them a good experience, but also to make sure that their data and their business is kept safe as users change the way that they work. So yeah,
that's interesting, because there's a question that come in here, and it probably you'll probably give out to me, Dan, because it's probably a nice question to put to you, but maybe it's a good question to put to Stephen, actually, in terms of it's saying, with many cybersecurity companies offering similar services, how does SonicWall's approach to integrating AI and machine learning in threat detection set it apart from competitors? But perhaps that's worth throwing out to Stephen in terms of, because you've had a long relationship with SonicWall, which I presume is built on the basis of the evolution that they have made in terms of the technology and how they've responded going forward. Is that something that maybe it's worth throwing some thoughts and comments on there, Stephen, from your point of view, and Leaf?
Well, certainly, I think it's probably a bit for Dan and myself. We have seen the involvement of SonicWall probably even greater in the last couple of years. And then with the last two acquisitions that they have made. So AI has been quite a part of SonicWall's cybersecurity portfolio over the past number of years. They've certainly played a lot within their cloud app security and their email security as well. So all that sort of technology is already being embraced and used within the SonicWall cybersecurity services. And I think probably I can lead over to Dan, because even when it comes down to AI, I know within the actual SOC itself, similarly, in the new SonicWall Security Operations Center, they are using AI services and machine learning to obviously identify the threats, to then negotiate the threats, and also then to potentially quarantine. So maybe Dan, you could probably add a wee bit to that.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, AI is everywhere, and if you don't embrace it, I guess you know you're going to find that it's going to be a big challenge. SonicWall has actually used AI before it was really a buzzword. Our security center, our threat research team have utilized AI for nearly 20 years or more. As a tool to be able to correlate the information. So the likes of the threat report that you see, the amount of, as you can imagine, the amount of data that we are processing across our entire portfolio across the globe, and all of our customers, both proactively and reactively, it's a huge amount. So if we didn't utilize AI in that space, we wouldn't be able to do what we do. But as you mentioned and allude to, it's used in a lot of our technologies. And one of the differentiators that we have, SonicWall versus, I guess, our competition, is going back to that feature that originated or started on the firewalls as it's called RTDMI. And essentially what it does is it uses AI to trick code that we perceive potentially to be a risk into doing what it needs to do, right? So we trick it into doing what it needs to do, and we get to see whether it's good or bad. And that is a real layman's breakdown of what it does. But the way that we do it is different to our competition, and we publish statistics each year. I think it was 536 or thereabouts per day that we're finding that our competition aren't. And I guess that security efficacy is one of the things that it's one of our pillars. It's something that we take great pride in, and that's what enables us to do it. And in fact, that service is so successful, we've put it on everything from our endpoint and our access points, on all of the technologies, whether you're in the office, whether you're outside of the office. The backbone of it being AI, but this type of technology is protecting you. So yeah, and you will see more of that as we go forward with regards to reporting and fine tuning. Technology is getting broader and broader, so to be able to manage it, to be able to keep it up to date, AI technology is going to be utilized more and more in those spaces. So yeah.
And there's a question that's in here, and you probably answered a significant amount of it here, because with the question is something, it's around how does SonicWall's research methodology differ from competitors, and how does it provide unique insights, that other security providers might miss? And I guess you're highlighting those sort of the way that's happening.
I mean, it's changed a lot in the last 10 years. We would have been able to get data from, say, just the firewalls, or our remote access products, that kind of stuff. But the fact that our portfolio is so broad now, and we have the Security Operations Center, we have, whether you've got a laptop or a desktop, whether you're in the office, outside of the office, whether it's cloud, we're pulling information from a lot of this. And it not only does it help us, provide data to organizations like today, but it also helps us to develop new security technology to make our products better. So yeah, and I mean, I would urge if anybody wants to find out more about it, wants to get more hands-on with it, reach out to Stephen and his team. We have a real Stephen has a real unique situation with the guys in his team work directly with our product management team in a lot of cases to develop these products, and that is something that not every organization can say that they can do. It means that if you have a challenge and you go to Stephen's team, there's members of the team who are speaking directly to the people that make decisions within SonicWall. And I mean, I think that definitely sets Stephen and his guys apart from everyone else, you know.
And it's a question maybe out of that is we obviously see a lot of incidents and events that take place in Ireland, because these stats are really interesting, but sometimes people say, well, does that really happen here? And I can assure you, I'm sure from our side we see that, and I'm sure Stephen, you and your team have seen that, and it's getting good experts involved. And to the point that I think you mentioned in the stats as well, Dan, X number of million, whatever it might be, but really frankly, even if it's a small organization or a large organization, the impact is huge if it takes out the organization. And I think, Stephen, what the question I was going to ask is, how have you seen the benefit of having those skilled technical resources to be able to come in to actually minimize the impact of an event? And indeed, obviously, would it be nice had it all been pre-prepared, but I'm sure the events will be subsequently tidied up.
Yeah, well, it's comforting for me as the business owner that we have the team that's capable of doing that. But the extra comfort is a fact now with SonicWall, and the fact that they have now invested in the managed SOC services, that those alerts should come even quicker, and actually we'll be able to stop more than we could have stopped in the past. I think that's the key. The likes of every SOC, we can talk about other vendors, and all vendors at the end of the day will be linking into the same threat intelligence, the same research and reporting groups on cyber threats, and they're reporting in and feeding information back, including with the biggest global corporations as well, and vice versa. They're getting that information back to assist them to come back down to partners like us to manage our end users and their computing and their firewalls, and that's where it comes to. So the comfort is we need our team at a very technical level, and thankfully we have that. And you're right, we do have a direct link into the product team. Thanks, Dan. I actually probably should have mentioned that, but didn't want to. But we do direct links into the product team where we are shaping even some of their cloud platform that's going on at the minute. It's a good place to be, because there's more heads sort of coming together to try and achieve the same and better outcome.
And I suppose ultimately, a comment that I would make is that we see it's a 24/7 issue.
Yes.
And it's very difficult for any organization to protect themselves 24/7 without having a partner organization. And as you say, even Stephen, from your point of view, you're not just partnering on your own, and you partner with SonicWall, so you've been in this for a long number of years, and that partnership and relationship grows and evolves to develop to meet the threats and the challenges that are going forward. Any sort of last minute sort of thoughts, comments, because they're the last questions that I have at this stage. And as I say to everybody, this will be made available, this deck. But any other comments or last thoughts and tips or tricks, Stephen or Dan, from yourselves?
I think from my perspective, I think trust the guys, the trusted advisors for a reason. This is their business, and I think you need to listen to them and talk to them about your organization. A lot of the time, alongside security and protecting the business, a lot of these solutions also enable a business as well. So enable you to grow, to be more efficient, for employees to have a better experience, and that can help your organization just outside of the security piece. So I think the key thing is to keep in contact and to keep talking to the people who care about your business and want to help you. So that's the key thing. Even attending today and spending the time to find out hopefully new information, useful information will benefit you. So
thank you. And Stephen?
Yeah, just thanks everybody for taking the time out. I have nothing to add, but except hopefully to see you, and those who can, Thursday, 5th of December, where we actually will go much deeper into the zero trust networking that SonicWall has released now in their cloud secure edge.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic, and I think I would recommend anybody go to that, because that whole area of the cloud secure edge and the whole zero trust networking is the evolution and the development of where everybody needs to be in terms of protecting themselves, particularly in this sort of hybrid life that we have at this point, where they were sitting in Dan's house being thrown out because he is happy on his own, or Stephen's house where he's isolated, trying to keep himself from giving everybody else whatever virus he has it, whatever flu or cold we have these days. But really, thank you everybody for attending. This session is available as a recorded session, so there's a lot of tips and tricks there and information, hopefully, that will be useful to you. Maybe if you want to bring it into your organizations and replay it to them. And indeed, Stephen, I know from a Leaf point of view, and Stephen and his team will be available to have a conversation with anybody who wishes to follow it up. There is a contact note there in terms of Rachel Morrow at Leaf. Indeed, contact any of the Renaissance team. SonicWall team will put you in contact with Leaf, indeed, if you don't have those contacts. So thank you very much. And it's scary to think we're talking about Christmas lunches, but sure, that's the way we are at this time of the year. Thank you very much to everybody.